Chances are if you drafted Nico Collins in 2023, you had a pretty good fantasy football season. So how can we find this year's version of Nico Collins? Let's find out. Now, before we talk about some of the players that could be this year's Nico Collins, we got to figure out what made Nico Collins in 2023. This was a wide receiver entering year 3, coming off 2 not so great statistical years. He had gone over just 400 yards each of his first 2 years. In year 2, he battled injuries, missed a good chunk of the season. But if you're the type of person who looks beyond the stats, you saw a good wide receiver. This is a guy who his reception perception showed good route running. He had good success versus man and press, which is a very good marker and a very good indicator for a potentially successful wide receiver. All he really needed going into year 3 was a better offense with a better QB, and he got it when the Texans drafted CJ Stroud. So taking all of that into account, when we're looking at wide receivers heading into year 3 in 2024, we want to look for wide receivers who haven't quite broken out yet, are actually good wide receivers when you look at their route running and their metrics versus man and press type of coverage, and also are either already playing with a great QB or could be seeing a big QB upgrade in 2024. I've got 4 guys in mind who check all of these boxes who I think could be this year's Nico Collins. And let's start with George Pickens. It's kind of shocking to think George Pickens hasn't really broken out when you look at his numbers, because he had over 800 yards as a rookie, and then, believe it or not, he had over 1,100 yards this year. I know it didn't feel like it because half of his yardage came in 5 games. That's right. Half of his 1,100 yards came in just 5 games. In the other 12 games, he was pretty non-existent and pretty terrible, which is why it feels like he didn't really break out this year. But there are reasons to be encouraged going into 2024 that year 3 could finally be that breakout year we want to see from George Pickens. He's got the talent. That's never been the issue. Nobody's looking at George Pickens and thinking like, this guy's a terrible wide receiver. I don't care who the quarterback is. No, that hasn't been the issue. The talent is there. We know this guy has incredible yard after catch ability, incredible contested catch, makes some of the most highlight reel catches you will ever see. Talent is not a question. And although he's not one of these guys who runs a full route tree, that is okay because he runs enough routes to be serviceable at the NFL level. No, he's never going to be a target monster because, again, he doesn't run the full route tree. But if he can get the right QB for him, it won't matter because he's also fantastic against press coverage, which is one of the toughest things to do as an outside wide receiver, is to continually beat press coverage, and he can do it. Now, the downside for George Pickens is he is a QB dependent type of wide receiver because, again, he's not a Justin Jefferson. He's not one of these guys that can run the full route tree, get open all over the field. But there's a good chance the Steelers have a different QB in 2024 because Kenny Pickett essentially got benched for Mason Rudolph. And look, it's not like Mason Rudolph is some rookie. He's been on the roster for a few years. The Steelers know what they have with Mason Rudolph. This guy's not going to be the answer in 2024 either. There's a lot of speculation that it could be Russell Wilson, and that would be great for George Pickens because one thing about Russell Wilson, he is still willing to chuck it deep and throw up those moon balls. We saw it over and over again with Courtland Sutton this year. George Pickens could be an even better version of Courtland Sutton with Russell Wilson. So George Pickens, even though he hasn't quite broken out yet as far as fantasy being a consistent week in, week out, league-winning type of fantasy player, if he gets the right QB this year in 2024, he certainly has a chance to be this year's Nico Collins and help people win leagues. Now, a similar type of player is Christian Watson of the Green Bay Packers. Again, we've seen this guy over stretches have some huge games and then disappear. Really, the big issue for Christian Watson has been health. When this guy has been fully healthy, not on the injury report, he's pretty much been nothing but phenomenal. The problem is he's never healthy. He's always on the injury report. And then as soon as he gets healthy, he lasts a game or two and bam, right back to being hurt. And like George Pickens, he's not a fully polished wide receiver. He's not going to run the entire route tree, but it doesn't matter because you want to talk about yards after catch. That is where Christian Watson makes his living. Get this guy the ball and let him take it to the house. He's also a huge red zone, end zone threat, which is great for fantasy football. Now, he's not going to make the highlight reel catches like George Pickens, but again, it doesn't matter because unlike George Pickens, he at least has the quarterback. Jordan Love looks like that dude. He looks like that guy. Getting the right quarterback like Nico Collins got last year is the hardest part of this equation because if your quarterback is terrible, you're probably not going to be a fantasy stud as a wide receiver unless, again, you're Justin Jefferson or somebody like that, which these guys aren't. Really, it comes down to for Christian Watson, he needs to stay healthy. If this guy can put together a full season, a fully healthy season, no more of these hamstring strains or whatever, This guy could absolutely be a league winner this year, and he's going to fall in drafts because he missed so much time last year and people are frustrated with him. We've seen it many times where guys who were injury prone, can't stay healthy, finally stay healthy and put up a big year. Christian Watson, that's all that's between him and a huge season this year. Don't sleep on him. He has a chance to be this year's year 3 huge breakout wide receiver. And I'm sure you're going to roll your eyes when I mention the name Drake London. Yes, it was another disappointing year for Drake London in 2023 with Arthur Smith. But guess what? He doesn't have to deal with Arthur Smith in 2024. He's gone. Hallelujah. Drake London is a stud wide receiver. Another one of these guys like Nico Collins. When you look just beyond the stats, you see a stud wide receiver. And unlike Christian Watson and George Pickens, and even Nico Collins to be fair, Drake London can run the full route tree. He can get separation at every level, on every route. He is a true alpha #1 wide receiver stuck in a horrible situation. We got to hope that with the new coach, with this new staff, they get him a QB. They cannot roll into next year with Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke. There is no way they can do that. They have the number 8 pick again. Will they trade up for a quarterback? Will they draft a quarterback at 8? Will they bring in a free agent quarterback? I don't know, but it's got to be better than Desmond Ridder was. This guy is an absolute stud wide receiver. People aren't going to want to draft him this year because he was so bad and because his Falcons offense burned people. But like Nico Collins last year, if he gets the right quarterback, he has the talent to absolutely be a top 15, maybe even a top 10 fantasy wide receiver. So don't sleep on Drake London. If the Falcons do the right thing and upgrade at QB, he absolutely could have a huge year 3 breakout. And then it's easy to forget about Treylon Burks because he really hasn't played much and he's been stuck in this Tennessee offense. But this is a guy who kind of profiles similar to Nico Collins, a big-bodied wide receiver, an athletic wide receiver. And like Nico Collins, missed a big chunk of his second season due to injuries. But also like Nico Collins, the Tennessee Titans may be in the QB market this year. I know they took Will Levis last year in the second round, but are they sold on Will Levis? Not to mention the staff that drafted him, probably not going to be back next year. They have the number 7 pick. They could trade up to get a QB. They could take QB at 7. This is a team that could be in the QB market, and that could be enough for Treylon Burks, again, if he can stay healthy and put it together for a full year. We've seen this guy have the kind of upside we want to see. Those big down-the-field catches, red zone touchdown catches. Much like Nico Collins last year, who most people had completely given up on in Dynasty and Redraft. Most people were like, nope, I'm giving up on Nico Collins. Treylon Burks just needs that quarterback upgrade and needs to put it together for a full 17 games. Why couldn't he do it? It's not like he doesn't have the talent. It's not like he's a bad player. He's just been stuck in a terrible situation, kind of like Nico Collins was. And kind of like Nico last year, he's probably going to be forgotten in most fantasy leagues. Don't forget him in your fantasy leagues. He's worth a shot late in your drafts, late in your startup drafts. Absolutely worth a shot. He has a potential to be a huge year 3 breakout at the wide receiver position. And if he is, you're going to be happy he's on your fantasy team. Those players have a chance to be this year's Nico Collins, but which 12 wide receivers are going to be the best in fantasy football this year? Find out in this video right here.